What you see behind me is one of the most terrifying things that any business executive can see, especially in operations. It's excess inventory. And excess inventory can absolutely destroy a company. It's disastrous, yeah. It's interesting because there's this company called Atari that many of you have heard of. And what happened was, and this was dug out of a landfill. Fascinating story. But what happened was in the early 1980s, there was this great movie, E.T. Of course, we all saw it. It was great. And then the Atari Corporation, which was the video game Nintendo equivalent at that point in time, the dominant player, what they did was they created this game called E.T. And everybody wanted to get it for Christmas that year. I remember I was like 10 years old. I was like, Dad, we got to get it. We got to get the E.T. game. And so my dad bought it, I remember. And it was awful, man. It was basically this thing that kind of looked like E.T. that was chasing around these M&M. It was a terrible game. It was awful. And so what happened was the Atari Corporation, they had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these things left over in excess inventory. And so what they had to do was they didn't know what to do with this. They buried hundreds of thousands of these in the desert. And you can go on eBay and buy these. They excavate this old antique now, and people sell it on eBay to make a living. But what happened was it caused the entire video game sector to drop, revenues to drop 90% year over year. That's right. 90% year over year, because this pushed the whole industry into bankruptcy. There's great companies back then like Intellivision, as well as Coleco. ColecoVision was my favorite as a kid. Coleco stands for the Connecticut Leather Company. They got into video games as well. And so what happened was for several years in the 1980s, the home gaming market was dead. And then eventually Nintendo reinvented the entire market with the 16-bit and the 8-bit NES systems or Nintendo systems. Now, what I want to do is I want to talk about how to avoid this costly mistake and how to make sure that your company doesn't go bankrupt because of inventory. And so I believe that failing to plan is planning to fail. And so what I do is I teach my students in my complete business plan course and in the venture capital boot camp of my MBA degree program. I teach them about writing a business plan first and how to think about inventory. And I don't think that you should ever make inventory and let it sit there ever. I don't think it should ever sit in your balance sheet. Last thing I'll say about this is even when it comes to financial statement analysis, you can miss it, right? You may not realize you have too much inventory. And so there's a formula called working capital. Okay, and basically what people look at is they take current assets minus current liabilities. And the problem with just looking at that is that you don't back out inventory, because inventory is actually a current asset on your balance sheet. And so you want to look at the quick ratio, which backs out inventory whenever you're calculating what your current assets are minus your current liabilities. And so the bottom line is please be careful when you're starting a company. Try not to start any company that makes a product unless you sell it first.